This might change everything for this stock. United Health Group has been all over the headlines, plunging 50%, wiping out 300 billion in market cap. But on July 29th, get ready because that could all change. And today, I'll show you why. Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Value Investor Show. Today we're talking about United Health Group (UNH), a stock that has been getting hammered in the press and punished in the markets. You've probably seen the headlines, you've probably seen the drop, but there's more to this story. And in this video, I'm going to walk you through the latest breaking news, what's really going on financially, the key risks and headwinds, and of course a bonus intrinsic value analysis that shows what the intrinsic value of the stock is. So just yesterday the Wall Street Journal dropped another bomb. Prosecutors are now questioning doctors and the billing practices of United Health. I mean, this company can't seem to catch a break. It feels like every week there is another investigative article. But here's what's different this time. Unlike the 20% drop we saw a few months ago from a similar article, this time the stock only moved 2%. Now, why is this? Well, I think it's because the market's finally waking up to the idea that this isn't as bad as it seems. And with earnings just 19 days away, this couldn't come at a more critical time. So, shortly after the article was released, United Health fired back. They publicly criticized the Wall Street Journal article as part of the continuous campaign against the Medicare Advantage, calling it that is based on incomplete data, a biased narrative, and a flawed understanding of the program. I think the company also said that there is an independent CMS audit that shows that the coding practices are amongst the most accurate in the industry, reflecting its commitment to compliance. It also noted that a decade-long DOJ challenge ended with no evidence of overpayment or wrongdoing. And I think that's very significant, right? It's not just silence anymore, it's pushback from UNH and it's strong. And UNH has been getting hammered, but now with the new CEO, with the new leadership team, they're coming back stronger, and then they want to stay around to get continuously hammered by inconsistent and unbiased and biased information against them. So, despite all that, sentiment around UNH is still very low. The stock has fallen below 300 yesterday and today. The PE ratio is around 12. The dividend yield is pushing to 3%, and cap the market cap has dropped from over 500 billion to 273 billion. But think about that. Everyone loved this stock at $500. Everyone was talking about how great UNH is. Now it's at $300 a few months later, and suddenly no one wants UNH? That makes no sense to me. And yes, they have issues and they are real and they will affect the short term, 1, 2, 3 years. However, there have been changes. UNH acted quickly. The CEO, Andrew Witty, resigned after missing earnings for the first time in 17 years. There are the investigations, there are the lawsuits, the scrutiny over pricing strategy. For example, yes, they will have rising costs because of the V28 implementations, the Medicare Advantage business. However, you know, UNH have had this kind of problems in the past. It's not the first time, it's not a first for them. So that's where the opportunity exists because they have competent leadership, they have the business model, they have a moat, and they have a rock solid business at a core. Which brings me to the tailwinds. Now there's a new CEO in town. His name is Steve Helmsley. Steve has led UNH between 2006 and 2017, and under his leadership, the stock quadrupled in size. Now, Steve not only came back, but he came back and he bought 25 million worth in stocks. Now, tell me what else could show confidence in a much better way. Secondly, Optum remains the best in class data analytics platform in the US. It has the best industry relations, it has the best data set in the market, and it's really unmatched. And in terms of market share, UNH is still the biggest in the US. And I think with all the heat, UNH won't be significantly affected in terms of market share. I don't think they'll lose any market share. Now, in terms of the dividend yield, is also 3%, which is very, very attractive. And so, in other words, the engine is still running. There is nothing fundamentally wrong with the business apart from the pricing strategy and some investigation that we've seen over and over again over the last 2 decades. But the market itself is growing. The population is becoming older, and definitely health insurance is something that is growing as a whole. So UNH is still positioned quite well in my opinion. Now let's dive into what really matters, which is the valuation. I have run two models, a DCF and an EPS based intrinsic value analysis. Now here are my assumptions for the base case. So if we look historically, the UNH has grown 10% in revenue year on year, net income has grown 12%, EPS 13%, and FCF 12%. Now for my base case, I assume 6% revenue growth, so much lower than the historical. In terms of EPS growth, I have assumed 10%, just because there will be some buybacks, and I do think that the company will become more profitable post 2025 and 2026 when they solve their pricing strategy. And FCF growth also at 10%, which again is lower than their historical, which brings both for the EPS method and DCF method a price that is very close, or in fact under the current price is under the EPS method in terms of intrinsic value, and in terms of the DCF method is very close. But to be honest, I don't think it can get any better than that. Now, for the bear case, assuming again the same historical growth, I've lowered my estimations here quite significantly. So 4% revenue growth, I have halved EPS and FCF growth to 6% for both. And under both cases, for the EPS method, the current price is still undervalued. However, for the DCF method, we're looking at a price of 250 per share, which is not that far away, to be fair. It's still 19% a difference, which is not a lot. So, if it gets to this price, I'll gladly buy more. And again, I'm looking at the bear case in this case. So, I think it's quite unlikely that we'll see this kind of assumptions. And I've also included a discount rate of 8% and a margin of safety of 50% in all my calculations. So depending on your margin of safety, these numbers could be inflated by a lot. Now, for the bull case, I haven't done one just because I do prefer to be conservative for UNH. And the reason being is because I want to see what happens on July 29th. I think, if July 29th turns out how I expect it to be, I'll also do my bull case scenario. But, what should we expect from July 29th? Analysts have significantly reduced their expectations in terms of what they expect for Q2 of forward year 25. And I think that leaves us with a possibility of UNH beating estimates quite dramatically. And I think that my personal opinion is that most of the downward pressure has been priced in. Now, this day, 29th of July, could be a turning point. And why do I say that? I think there are two scenarios that could play out. The first one is UNH beats earnings by a lot, and the stock skyrockets. Confidence is back on UNH to perform. Institutions are pouring their money back into UNH, and happy days. Now, the second scenario is that UNH isn't able to fix the problems. They're getting worse. They can't even beat. In fact, they come in par or even miss earnings because they haven't been able to fix anything, and it's getting worse day by day, which will mute and will create more pressure to UNH. And in that case, it's going to be really bad. Now, when I invested in UNH, I didn't invest so that I can sell in 1 year. I invested so that I can sell in 4 or 5 years, even more. But with that being said, I think it's very important for the company to at least meet expectations in terms of, the what the kind of expectation is in terms of earnings. So, July 29th will be a very important day for us. I think that it could mark the beginning of a turnaround, in my opinion. But based on the fundamentals, based on insider activity, and based on where the stock trades today, I believe that we are much closer to the bottom than many investors think. With that being said, we will be watching closely, and please do subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment, and do let me know on whether you're thinking about UNH, and leave any questions that I can address in the next video. Thank you very much.